Musta fam. I don't know if this is on. Looks like we're live. Amazing. Hopefully this shit works. It's my first time doing this. I don't know. I was gonna have Jazzy join me. But some bitches gotta work around here. I'm gonna record just in case this doesn't work. All right, fam, what's good? What's good? I'm getting some kickback. I'm getting kickback. I don't know. So hopefully this is working. If it's not, whatever. I have it recorded on my computer and I'm just gonna refer back to my computer, whatever. Okay, so hopefully you guys can see my screen. Can't get it to do the presentation. Here we go. Okay, so welcome, fam. Kamusta. We got a lot of good lives. Yesterday I did a encoded voice note with Emily Zonbrecker, the owner of the studio HQ for Iron Yogi Fitness. Oh my God, she is such an inspiration. I felt hella inspired after we spoke. Like, she's just the definition of strong. And we are just doing really good work out here in St. Pete. She's amazing. I am so blessed to be in good company. So take a listen to that on starseedwisdomyoga.passion.io. It's under encoded voice notes, and that's free for everyone. As always, thank you to all of my subscribers on the Starseed Wisdom Yoga app for years, through all of my many phases, through so many of my different streams of consciousness and thought. Today, I pulled the Serpent of Fire, Priestess of the Serpent Sisterhood. And, you know, I deliver all of these messages so grateful from my heart and so grateful for my sisters. And I know that there's some men on the app too. And when I say sisters, it's a gender inclusive term. You know, I'm speaking to energy. Like, I speak to those that, like, people who have been really fucking with me for a long time have seen the changes in me, have seen the cycles. And that's really what I'm talking about, is like this star that's like seated within or whatever. Also pulled this, of course, High Priest of Atlantis. Oh my God. And this guy looks like my son. So it's all divinely aligned. Oh, Apollo, which I live near. I shouldn't actually say where I live on the internet, but everybody knows I'm in Tampa. I live near Apollo Beach. Apollo, the divine messenger. Love this adaptation of Apollo. And now I'm just going to fucking get to it, because this is what the cards are saying. Ace of Wands. Just fucking do it. This information, y'all, this information is like ancient. You know, I've been contemplating a lot about the mounds. You guys who have been following me for like a hella long time, you know that, like, since 2016, I have been obsessed with the quote unquote mounds. And I have to like make it clear here that, like, pyramid is another word for mound. Earthwork is another word for mound. Sometimes they call them middens. Sorry, somebody's about to do their lawn right next door to me, and like, it's about to get really rowdy. I might have to pause. I'll probably use the bathroom during that time or whatever, but I'll let you know. So, you know, basically, like, these structures that are so mysterious to everybody, like the general public is like, what the fuck are these? Nobody actually really cares for them. I ran into these unexpectedly when I was homeschooling my daughter at Bad Bitch University, and we had just moved here to Florida. And that's a whole nother topic of like what drew me down here to Florida in the first place. And this whole concept of like psychogeology, I guess you could call it, like geography, geology and geography, really very similar, but like just the energies that drive emotion in people based upon like the location. And like besides family and besides work, like why are people drawn to certain places? Like more and more of the young people that I meet, and when I say young, I'm talking like they were born in the 2000s, you know what I'm saying? More and more of these types of people are moving to places where they feel inspired, moving to places where it's not just driven by who they are in their tribe, but like their soul purpose. And I can't help but think that the places that we're drawn to and the special mixes of energy within their natural environment, whether it's water or sand or mountains or flatland or trees or soil, that we're drawn to these places based upon the sonar resonance that they output. Like each of these mounds that we know that the pyramids of Giza have vast amounts of tunnels and water aquifers underneath them. We know that a lot of cathedrals and churches and sacred sites have water that flow underneath. And like all this shit that I've been taking, gosh, it's windy out here today, y'all. But all this shit that I've been intaking about astrotheology and that linguistics doctor, old world Florida, shout out old world Florida, and shout out Spirit Spores for giving me the ability to be able to place everything together and to put all of these, like connect all of these fucking dots. Anyway, this, I think it was on Old World Florida. I can't really remember like who said it, but that the word portal, which if you look at my last encoded voice note, it was called Detroit, a gateway portal to Atlantis. But the word portal actually translates into gate in Cuban, or I think it's like Spain Spanish. It's like El Portal or something like that. That the word portal actually translates into gate. That was huge. And I was like, ding, ding, ding. And then it led me down this road where I'm here in front of you talking about this random, it's not random. It's all synchronistically aligned. Hang on one second. He's still passing by. It's still loud as shit. I don't know if my microphone picks it up, but I live on a bayou and they're just coming by to like do the landscaping. So anyways, today, I'm just going to get right to it, y'all. I just keep beating around the bush, keep talking. But I'm sort of talking through like what inspired me to talk about this kind of thing. I should tell people that I'm live. Hang on. Just telling the people on IG that I'm live. Log into our YouTube, Starseed Wisdom Yoga YouTube. I'm going live for the first time on YouTube. And I got my rosemary oil to help me not lose my train of thought, along with my slides. This is the subject. I'll post the link to it in the app later too. Okay. Oh, it's like taking 10 years to post, but whatever. Okay, so this is what we're talking today. The Astro-Archeology, native mound earthworks, celestial timelines, ages of astrology and crop circles, because somebody asked me about the Detroit, the Gateway Portal to Atlantis video. They were like, okay, I can follow everything that you're saying, but like I can't place it in time. And I was like, okay, I got you. I got you. Hang on. It looks like it's finally developing. I'm not really sure where to link people to watch this live, but oh, here we go. Yeah, I got you. Hang on. All right. Just remember to fast forward 20 minutes on this. Okay. Live stream on YouTube for the first time. Next time I'll have it all set up. This is why I don't do live videos, because I have to like get ready. I have to do a bunch of shit to get ready. Join this hot mess. Okay. So anyways, this is what inspired all of this. And this shit is really potent. It's really good, guys. It's just taking me a second to get there. All right. So I just want to start this off with like this sacred word, which is Manitou. And thank you to all who came before who did this research. I provide a works cited of like all the videos that I watched about this, the books that I've read. I didn't cite every single article because I feel like I, you know, the major links that I provide have all of it in there and more. But this word has such resonance, and like I live near what's called like the Manatee River, but it's not spelled the same way or whatever. I think it's like Manistee. I can't even remember, but whatever. When I heard this word for the first time, it resonated because basically what it is a thought of a potent spirit that has taken residence in something other than an animal. So perhaps a tree, a rock, or a mound. Okay, that's what a Manitou is. It is like a talisman. It is like something that is totally charged. And this is, I didn't spell genius right on here, but it's the true genius loci, or the middle of the location. Oh my God, he's back again. 1 second. I'm so irritated. Like they never come around here. And of course, when I'm doing this shit, they come around here. So basically, he's coming back. Like, just cut the fucking grass. Okay, so basically, the Manitou is the focal point of a sacred site when we're talking about spiritual science. It could also be a creature like a dragon, like any of the Sphinx, cats, lions, like anything that is spiritually charged and that you feel a way about it. Like all of the architecture in Detroit, I'm going to go ahead and put this out here right now, first to say it and be very confident about this, is a Manitou. Like, and also Lake Manitou. I know like there's the northern and southern Manitou Islands up by Sleeping Bear Dunes up north. And I used to go there as a kid, and like I did one time I asked, I was like, why is it named this? I asked it to somebody and they like shut me down. They were like, oh, it's named after the Indians, which of course in my last one I talk about how that's not even a relevant term, but you know, they explained it away by saying like, these are all named after the Indians. These are all named after like really important people. But in all actuality, what these people who owned the land back then and currently own it now are doing is like, they know all of this shit. This shit that I'm about to share with you that I think is super mind-blowing, that I woke up like, holy shit, I need to put this together and tell people. They already know all of this, and they've been using it for millennia and have been manipulating, I don't know if that's the right word, casting their spells, manipulating, yes, but casting their spells on an unknowing audience. And this is all in our subconscious. So on an instinctual level, you're going to be like, yeah, okay, this resonates with me. This is the world according to Leia, and I'll toss that. And as you refine like your discernment and you start working through all of this prima materia, this like matter in the subconscious, us as a consciousness, like a mass consciousness, become wiser and wiser, and we start to ascend. And like, I feel like me sharing this, shout out to all the people before who shared all of their stuff, like, and people who encourage me to share my light. I want to encourage you to share your light, specifically Jasmine. Holler at your girl, Jasmine. I want her to get up on here and start. Oh my God, all my cards just like went everywhere. It's windy as shit in Tampa right now, y'all. But yeah, shout out to Jasmine. I am encouraging people who have like a propensity toward this type of material and like have an interest in it, to share what it is that you are realizing and researching. And even though it might seem like I came full circle with all, I was like, holy shit, this is like, I figured out the keys, like I know why. But then it just led me to like infinitely more answers. Anyway, and like once I say one word, I just tend to like get ahead of myself, and I'll go off on other tangents. And like, I think I'm gonna make this a series, because once I open the door, it's almost like I can't stop. So I was getting into geomancy, which is the art of placing or arranging buildings or sites auspiciously, like according to ley lines, like what I talked about in the last video, according to special energy vortex centers, things like this, except I'm breaking it down in this video and basically like creating an understanding of things that we see in plain sight, but might not give any more depth of thought to, have already explained it away or written it off. Like, you know, this reminds me, I don't want to get too off track, but it reminds me of, I think David Wilcock talked about this, that certain Freemasons would use different colored paint because our brain, there's like colors that our brain like won't register. Like we will look over right away. For example, like I love green, so I'm always like attracted to green and like see it more or whatever. And like I know that we as humans, psychology generally speaking, respond to red and yellow together, which is like why McDonald's logo is like red and yellow, because it appeals to the root and the hunger chakra. And so in that same way, our brain actually can overlook certain colors. And so they'll paint certain portals that way. They'll paint certain doorways that color. And we will simply have it in our subconscious, and we won't see it consciously, but it'll be stored in our subconscious, and we know like what they're basically doing is conjuring from the subconscious, the collective subconscious, through symbols and like different effigies. So anyways, this brings us back to the Manitou. So what the Manitou does is it draws to itself and it concentrates earth energy in order to affect some kind of profound harmony between the earth and the sky. And I think they do this in different parts of the world through large scale effigies. Think about like the Super Bowl and like some of their mass rituals that they already perform. Like, I don't know if it was J-Lo in the last one, or maybe Rihanna, or I'm not sure where we're at. And I don't keep up with all that. But whenever that comes around, is it in February? Yeah. Like whenever it comes around, everybody's attention is toward that. And then everybody's feeding their energy to the halftime show of like whatever beautiful goddess it appears to be. But is it a goddess, or is it a homunculus, a demon, an entity that's formed to cast spells for harvesting of energy, because wherever attention goes, energy flows. Like if, you know, like I've tried my hardest not to observe like commercial holidays, because I know that like these lizard people, or I don't know what you want to call them, these lower level entities are feeding off of our energy and our loosh. And I want to be conscious with the way that my family spends energy. So I try to like do the hippie thing and like decommercialize from like these major holidays. But like, as I've been a business owner and as I enter and understand energy, I see like how the mass consciousness is like pulled through our social media apps primarily, and like following and feeding into this energy, and it consumes, literally makes a consumer of us, which is what the devourer, the Ouroboros, Satan, that's what Satan does. That's what the devil is the consumer. And so I try to not do that, but I find myself falling into it just because I'm a part of mass consciousness. Like I can't just isolate and separate myself. I'll just be sad and lonely doing these type of videos. Like, you know, I feel first. So in the world according to Leia, and the way that I teach and the way that I process the world and all of these different, I know now that it's different dimensions, is that I have to set aside sadhana in order for me to be able to have that time to connect to God, so that I can process all of the information that comes through feeling, because it doesn't just turn off when I go to sleep. Actually, when I'm sleeping, it's like, that's where it's most active. It's 24/7. And like, I think that's why, like, I'm just, my baseline is drained. Like, you know what I'm saying? Like my baseline is like, I'm always tired, even in the sunlight. I take I have my fresh squeezed citrus every morning. Like I do so much shit to stay healthy, just to have a baseline of health. And like, I still feel sometimes like this low, this like gravitational pull. Lately, it's been like really pulling at the soul, but like, I don't know. That's not what this is about. This is about how the Manitou harnesses that energy and actually can give more life. It can give, it's basically life-giving. I put the Cree and Ojibwa like script for it, for lack of a better term, and then how it's so similar to Sanskrit for prana. There's two versions of Sanskrit for prana, and they look so much alike. And that's essentially what this is like, it's seeing the physical world, but then like, that's really just looking. When you're just like viewing these things and you're kind of taking in the information without having a spiritual like element to it, it's just 3D. You're only seeing, it's like a lower vibration. And what the words are encoded for, and what all of yoga is encoded for, and everything we do in a ritual sadhana is encoded for, is so that we can, I think, integrate higher level concepts and become closer to God as a mass consciousness. Okay, 2 huge dragonflies just landed. I wish I could see comment. I don't know if there's like comments on this. I'm not really sure how to check that. One day I will know. Okay, why are my pictures not on here? This is supposed to have pictures on here. All right, well, whatever. I'll add them in later. You guys have to understand that like, I've never done this before on live on YouTube, and also I usually like am very poised and sort of present these things really eloquently in the trainings. And I woke up this morning and like just wrote this shit down on the screen instead of like in my journal, so that I would do something with it. You know what I'm saying? I need to be creating content at all times. That's what it feels like. And sometimes I just am content. I don't need to create content to be content. And I wanted to share this because, I don't know, I felt called by spirit to share. So, as you know, if you follow me on IG, it's Leia with 13 underscores and a dot. you follow me on IG. I tracked all of the different native earthwork mounds that I was visiting here in Florida, but all over Turtle Island, like the US. There's like 10,000, probably way more. Probably way more. But people call them mounds, people call them middens, people call them Indian mounds. Sometimes megaliths, which is like basically an ancient stone, because some of them have bones and artifacts, but some of them don't have them. And today there are something like 50 to 60 temple-like structures that were huge, and they contained no burials within the walls of the structures themselves. These ones that I visited, which I'm going to actually pull up the videos, because like this is one that I visited in Pinellas Park, which is near where I live. I think was it Juan on Juan? I don't know, Juan Ayala, one of the podcast people that I listened to said that like Pinellas means beautiful pine or whatever. Okay, let's see where this is going to take us. This should be to my Instagram stories about the native mounds. Okay, look, we go hard in the paint here, y'all. Let me turn this up. Okay, so this is at the Madeira Bickle Mound. Hold up, how do I pause it? All right, yes, and I post the video that I watched on YouTube of like this man who was channeling the spirits there. He had some kind of technology that was like reading the energy of the entities that are there and translating what they were saying in English. And he was like, you know, his genetic code linked to the genetic code of these like entities, and he was able to like communicate with them. It's crazy. And so I linked the YouTube. It's actually on my Instagram in the stories that have the little mound with a feather. And this is at the Madeira Bickle Mound. That's what they call it. But the energy here, y'all, here, I'll keep playing this now. The energy here was absolutely bonkers. Like I felt it right away. The information that I got right when we got to this point, like right where it's showing the beginning of going up there and this little like plaque, I'm going to pause it. It was 95 degrees and humid out, and I had chills like all over my body. So, you know, I don't just discount that. Like there's so many people who have gaslit. I don't want to say people, but I allowed other people to gaslight me into believing that that feeling was just all in my head, created in my head. And I think like sometimes I do suffer from trying to find things that are there when it's not really there. But in my discernment and in all of the spiritual work that I've done until this point, when it's hot as balls out and my hair is standing up on its ends, I mean, that's undeniable, visceral knowledge. So living with this level of clairsentience, or the ability to be psychic through feeling states, I never understood until I understood astrology. I actually kind of want to talk a little bit more about the basics of astrology, but I feel like that should go in a different like video. Anyways, I'm going to keep playing this. How amazing to find one of the first original people burial mounds. Yeah, this one. And then, it goes like the ignorance of me like me going into it. I had no idea what we were getting into. Here's us bailing. The energy is not touristy, LOL, fucking creepy. I cannot. That's what I said in this. Because me and my daughter didn't even want to go up these steps. That's how like energetically shifty it felt at 2:00 in the afternoon when the sun is blazing. Okay, like I don't even know how to describe this. It was like very weird feeling. But taking away that emotional state, okay, taking away that nervous system state and just taking the logic and the data the physicality of where we were at. I think I have it in this sequence, but later in the next week, I come back with my husband and we went up he made me go up the stairs. He's like, we drove all the way. It's actually only like 25 minutes away from where I live, but we took the trip out there. And by the way, all of the mansions are on sale around that mound. All of the houses are for sale, probably because it's haunted, but I will let you know why momentarily. The second time we went out there, he was like, we're going up here. And so we went up to the mound and it was just this flat top. Like there was nothing really notable about it. Other than that it felt like dark. Like, I don't know how to describe that, but for me, it felt dark. And the high priestess card is like drifting in the wind. But, so we got up to the top of the mound, swarms of butterflies landing on my husband, landing on me. And I was like weeping because I was like, holy shit. Because, you know, in the end, like, it's in the astral. It can't hurt us here now. There's no way like that I was going to physically get hurt. And of course I had my husband with me, so I felt like safer, but energetically it was this feeling of like expansiveness. And I found out later that these date back 2000 years. So I provide us with where we're at in time in this presentation. But I kind of want to see what else I have in here. I want to see what else I put in here. Yeah, we kept seeing like this is an osprey. They say that like, well, at least some elderly people that I met on the beach one time said that the spirits speak to us through animals and that they will show themselves through animals, through insects. And I found that feather. It said, I'm making myself laugh. Won't find this on the top 10 Tampa hotspots. I know it was, oops. I know it was a donation back to the people. Yes, because the OG, this woman, when you go to like, look this up on wherever, this Madeira Bickle, they gave it back to the state because she was like, I can't do anything with this. You know, honestly, like rich people, I feel like people, they love high ground. They love being on higher ground. And it makes total sense to me that these structures and the people that created these structures way, way, way back were looking to create a higher ground. That makes energetic sense to me, and it correlates to the logical data that I have now, knowing the rich people that live around here. He's back. I'm going to take a hit while he's mowing the lawn. I'm going to grab those cards too. Okay, sorry about that, y'all. It's just extra windy out here today. And this guy keeps coming back around with this fucking lawnmower. I'm trying to monetize my YouTube channel. I'm trying to share the information for the AI to synthesize and use. Okay. So this is us walking up and it was completely silent. And then all of a sudden, like when we got to this point, they all started making noise. And I was saying, like, they're saying, like, why is this hoe here? I'm hilarious. I think I'm hilarious on that. I crack myself up on this. But anyway, so when I went there, I was like, I don't even know. I did very surface level information driving to this mound. Okay. I did what's, I can't believe this guy's back here. Like, just cut the whole lawn. I, you can't even make this shit up, dude. He's just lingering. Still here. I'm going to take this opportunity to Rosemary. It helps me stay on track. Okay, so I did one of those things like psycho, what's it called? Hang on, let me get the terms right, y'all. I listen to too much stuff, that's why. Psychogeography is like this practice of basically just like going wherever you're called. Like, you're not going because you have a meeting there or like, you know, of a great restaurant there. You're like literally just going because your emotions led you there. Something synchronistically in the web led you there. This was one of those days. Every time I go to the fucking mounds, it's like that. Sometimes I plan to go, like I plan to go to Jungle Prada, which I think I documented here. I plan to go to not Crystal River, it's bad. It's seriously so annoying, you guys. Okay. Jesus, he's back. Like, he's probably wondering what the hell I'm doing. I'm usually like titties out, doing my encoded voice notes for hours out here because you can't like see. It's a weird setup. Okay, so anyways, it was one of those days that I had followed my energetic whatever, and I had my daughter. I was homeschooling my daughter at that time, and we took a turn and we were led to these mountains. I didn't know what they were called. On Google, it said something different than what was online. And so it tells you some story, you know, oh, there's a history of disturbance. Oh my God. I can't even make this up, you guys. Look. Can't make it up. Can't make it up. Okay, he's done now. So there's a history of disturbance. A lot of these artifacts were stolen. And what remains is now like in the museums. Like essentially the state sold it to the Smithsonian, and they did this with almost every single site. And when I was teaching my daughter about like the history of Florida, because like we had just moved here, we watched this documentary called Inventing Florida, where like essentially the palm trees that you see here and everything that you think of as Florida is like laced in half truth. Not necessarily every single thing, but the tall palm trees, for example, are not native to here. So they imported those to sort of create this more like idyllic tropical environment to attract people to buy land here. But prior to like the 50s, when or like it was from like the 20s to like the 50s, but like prior to all of that, this was just the last frontier, you know? There wasn't anybody here. They were like digging canals to try to, you know, access these places that are basically swamps, and to like drain the swamp, to literally drain the swamp. I'll have to like link all these videos, but the bottom line is I feel like the spirits here were asking to be released by appearing to us and showing all that I've seen and then physically felt there, like to like release these spirits. And so we went back and I offered cannabis, I offered sweet tobacco. We were swarmed by the butterflies. I felt this emotional release and it felt peaceful there when I was there. I don't know if that did it for everyone, but this is, someone in the DM basically saying, I hear the land crying, the tears and nonstop tears and distraught. Like a lot of those who are very astral and those of us who are really in touch with those spiritual realms, which, yes, this is my sister, my sis Sade, who is an Aquarius, super spiritual, and she can feel this stuff just like how I can. And I put the ghosts on this land speak loudly. All the houses are for sale, just like how I was telling you guys. And she's like, yeah, man, they're crying. And a lot of us who are super feminine in our energy feel it in such a way and like can't detach from that. Like it's just a part of us. It lives as a part of us. But like I have gotten to a place in my levels of consciousness. Well, it's two dragonflies that were together. But I like on top of one another like this. I got to a level in my consciousness where I'm able to sort of detach from the emotion of it and feel the spirit and conduit the spirit and release it back to the light. And that's maybe what all of this is for. I'm sorry, my shit's going off the hook and the wind chimes. Okay, so this is more in the realm of what we're going over in today's presentation of like, basically the mounds were on the ley lines and they're not maps of time, but rather maps of space for after we leave here. So what I'm saying is one of the things of insight that I got was that it's not just speaking to the earth ley lines, it's also speaking to a celestial map. And this idea that I had, like this, I didn't look anything up, like it just came to me on those sites. And so like, I'm a very, I like to think things through, you know what I'm saying? Like I overanalyze things and I live mainly in my head. My whole yoga practice is to come into my heart, but my default is to think about things and to logic my way through things. And like I said, I followed my intuition to these mounds. This was something I wrote just because I felt like I felt the energy and I wanted to share it with people. It wasn't anything that I channeled until, wasn't anything I was intending to channel. Let me put it that way. So as you can see here, I'm going through all of these stories and I have 25 other slides, y'all. This is going to be a minute. So you need to pull up and make yourself comfortable. And if you're still with me, blessings to you. You're about to receive such a gift. Fresh squeezed citrus, Florida orange juice. And the offerings to the Tocobaga Nation, which there's a mixture of nations there. Tocobaga is a dominant one in that area, and I don't doubt that it was. But in Florida, there's like the Takasta and the Timucua, like there's so many different origins here. And I fuck with that heavy. And they all like lived in harmony with one another at one point. They all warred at one point. These videos that I made reference to before, you can go down those rabbit holes of like the actual origins of the Moors and the Creeks and the Timucua, the Nephilim even, and like the Phoenicians, the Vikings, who became the Moors, who were the Nephilim and became the Moors and became the natives, and the natives became, well, I think that they left the planet. I think a lot of them are on a different dimensional level, and some of the spirits that stuck to this realm are here to help us as much as we are here to help them. And so when I did this offering of frankincense, the cannabis, the tobacco, like the incense, we were swarmed with the butterflies. I tagged Jazzy because Jazzy's going to do these lives with me, girl. I don't know if you're out there, girl, but you're going to do these lives with me. you're meant to do them with me. Like the ancestors said, like God said. No, I'm just kidding. I know she's got to hustle. We all got to hustle, but this is one of the main messages that I get from channeling all of this spiritual energy is that we're in the era of that it's not really about money. That money isn't going to be the main focus of why people do the things they do. And it's a new era of what abundance is and what that means and what art is and redefining and rebuilding a culture. Because like we've been hijacked, like especially me, I'm like Gen X cusp of millennial. I'm a millennial cusper, 83. So I didn't necessarily grow up like knowing about stuff. Like I had to unlearn a lot of stuff and was like traumatized. Like basically my entire childhood was like based on lies. And all of the history that I thought that I knew and did actually really well in school was all not really a lie, not fully, well, yeah, 100%, 110% fully lies, but embellished and like used nefariously. It was like a step further than lies because it was like used nefariously to manipulate for other co-opted narratives and agendas. And it's like, I don't know, man. Like, I just think like with this new generation that's coming in, especially like my kids, you know, everything is going to be to the point of neutrality, where just like Aquarius, because we're in the age of Aquarius, where we rebuild and we rebuild in a good way for what's good for humanity, like being driven by the heart and doing things that are heart-led. Shout out heart-led revolution. Shout out spirit spores. There's so many people who support this work and they energetically support it and may not even know it. And anyways, it says here, trying to slow it down. There were so many sweet spirits around us. Yeah, that was incredible. You can't see shit here, but like to be there in person, to have all of the butterflies around us, it was just amazing. So here I talk about, okay, this is me like not knowing shit about shit. And I just was like writing shit. And then now I actually have so many layers I could put on top of this. But I said, gain clarity through learning that the framework of Algonquin cosmology immediately suggests that the nations and the medicine wheels that we used to build at Starseed trainings are not calendars, not just calendars. They can be calendars, but they're also spatial guides that lead the souls of the dead to specific celestial destinations. And then I have a hunch that the original people's burial mounds are on vortexes that correlate with star systems, seriously inspired by this land and its history. So I, posted this graphic that just sort of shows that the medicine wheels correspond with the solstices, which correspond to specific constellations in the sky, celestial bodies in the sky. And kind of didn't really think anything of it after that. I do. I'm going to turn off the sound. So we go to another supposed burial mound, but this one had, well, here we're offering cannabis to it, but this one had like 4 or 5 different mound structures. And there was a fucking CrossFit class. I'm dead. There was a CrossFit class on the supposed Temple Mound. I'm like, what? Do these people have any idea? This woman knew. She knew what was up. She was like, holler. She had the dowsing sticks, which at the time I was like, what are these interesting things? But this is how some of the ancestors found their way, was through dowsing rods. It was more like recent, I would say like the medieval times, that kind of era. And so when those dowsing rods cross, I actually have some in my room. And that's what I used at the burial mounds, which I'm sure you'll see in this video sequence. But she also had a ghost app. So there's been different iterations of the ghost. I loved that tree. I did a lot of content in front of that tree. So there's been a lot of, sorry, I lost my train of thought. I got upset. I saw the tree and I'm like, holy shit, I remember the energy of that. Those mangroves. Okay, yeah. So there's a lot of different ghost apps. And like one of them that Lacey had when she came here, shout out Lacey and the Wellness Collective. Check out that encoded voice note. She's the founder of the Wellness Collective, was working a corporate job, quit all of it, and now does van living. And it's posted under encoded voice notes if you want to listen to that. But she had the app and it actually was translating words. Ooh, I look good there. I love my lashes there. But she was translating words, okay? And the app would survey the land and basically produce different words. And I turned it on when, I don't think it was at this one. Hang on. I'm not sure what I'm saying there. Okay, the Cordovant Mound. This is south of that initial mound that we were at, but along the same water line of the Gulf. This was right after Hurricane Ian. Oh my God, this guy's like, there's nobody ever out here. And for whatever reason today, this guy is back on his fucking mowing the lawn. It's like he's doing it on purpose, y'all. Kicking up all these allergies. Okay. So yeah, so I say here, I'm sorry if you can't hear me. It's just like he won't leave this area. While I appreciate it, everything looks really nice. It's like clearly I'm on my first YouTube live. He didn't get the notification. He didn't hit subscribe. Hang on, guys. It's business. This is why I don't like to do lives, because like I have to be able to check my phone. Because I'm on multiple jobs right now. Okay. So these are the different mounds that I visited, and the energy was just like so weird right after Hurricane Ian, because like there was no birds. Like, when you're in Michigan, it's like a really distinct, you walk outside and like you hear a symphony, like all different kinds of birds. And like I took it for granted for years. But then that moment, hang on, this moment right here. This moment right here where like it was just silent, and the bridge, this little like port pier, I don't even know what you would call it, like was ruined from the hurricane. So they like sectioned it off. I could like feel a presence there. I could feel that there were entities there, and there was no birds, and it was just silent and very warm out, and I had chills. And here I am like walking back to my vehicle. So I'm just trying to show like the level of psychic intelligence that comes through our senses. So here I call them midden mounds. This is a different site. This is more north. And at this site, it's a very small site, and it's sort of flatter. Like it kind of looks like one of those pyramids that had a flat top. But the energy there was really specific because it was right at like, it was right on the water. And that day that I went was really windy. And so I kind of get into it in the presentation piece, all the messages that I get. I mean, I can't even tell you guys, like the land, this was the latest one that my family took me to, which was Florida's pyramids on Crystal River. It's a really low key spot. Like, first of all, I think Perky was trying to surprise us with going to the actual like springs. So the water that looks like turquoise, that looks real ideal, and it almost looks like somebody messed with the color of it, but they didn't. It's actually, well, up by the Emerald Coast or like the Panhandle, it's actually plankton that's being reflected back. And so it has that sort of like emerald color, hence the name Emerald Coast. But like here on the Gulf, some of the areas are turquoise because of the amount of limestone in the water. And damn, dude, that one video called, so you see them crossing here. That video called, I think it's called like the Fountain of Youth or something, where Homeboy talks through that there's radium in the water springs of Florida. And radium is something like John Rockefeller. I shouldn't even be saying, I'm not even going to be able to be monetized because I'm smoking weed, titties out. Like, but John Rockefeller only drinks water from Orange Springs, Florida. Like, if the top 1% is drinking from like a specific water source, you bet your bottom dollar that shit is probably like top notch. You know what I mean? So this myth of that we have a finite amount of water and that our water's so fucked and that the earth is so fucked. I mean, it is partially true. We do need to stop abusing the earth, but also remember that Mother Earth is this regenerative, beautiful feminine force that is literally producing billions of gallons of fresh water, like on the daily underneath Florida. Well, I think my theory is it's like across the entire nation, but what I can prove is that it's underneath Florida, like provable with what I have available to me, which is actually a lot. You know, all of us can do this kind of like putting together of the dots now because the information is becoming unsuppressed and it's available to us all. You know, what always just worries me is like when they are walking their dogs right by the bayou water, like there's not gators in this body of water. I know that our bayou is sort of, as my husband says, ruled by the turtles because there's like so many turtles in it, but we are like 2 minutes from the bay. And I really truly believe that like them dinosaurs, they like to hide. Okay, so here I really talk about my theory, which is that the electromagnetic cross is indicating a vortex that's springing up from inside of the earth, which is what I'm talking about with these underwater, these fresh caves, freshwater caves, just gallons and gallons of water. I wish I could like send links every single, like when I talk, these links would just come up so that you can like click on it for later reference. But that one, I can't remember who did that documentary, but it's about basically how the divers would go under Weeki Springs in Florida, and they were like 400 feet down where the water pressure is like pretty immense, and took off their masks and were like gulping water. It was that fresh after there had been a gasoline dump in there, like billion, you know, like these billionaire corporations dumping gasoline in there. But the earth is producing this fresh water, like billions of gallons on the day that he opened his mask and drank it. Anyways, if you slice Florida in half horizontally, it would look like Swiss cheese because of all of the different aquifer canals. And I really believe that these canals are all connected, like these aquifers are all connected, and that somehow our industrial military complexes like traveling through them, but also that potentially the Nephilim traveled through them, potentially these other, like, I don't know if you want to call them races, these groups of people were traveling through them, like the elves in J.R.R. Tolkien. I really like feel that I'm onto something here. I don't know what else I put in here. Okay, so like see how the mounds don't look that big? They call, like, sometimes on their little propaganda, I don't know what you want to call it, they will call them burial mounds. And it's like there are certain ones where they found bones, but in these ones, which are directly correlated to these lodestones, let's go back here, they call them steels. But it says the ramp from the second temple mound points directly at the undecorated steel. My wind chime's gone off. That basically they correlate with the solstices. The solstices. So the lodestones are stones that have magnetite in them, where they're energetically charged, and you can actually, magnetite is what the birds have in their brain. They develop it in their brain, which is what sort of guides them along the Earth's electromagnetic ley lines for when they come back down south from being up north. Yo, there's the app that I was talking to you guys about. It said 100. It said black. It said 100. And it said something else. I don't remember what it was. So like, I don't know how to, I have an inkling of how to interpret that. And I talk about it later in my slideshow. But in that moment, I was like, what? I was so confused. And the dowsing rods were going like this. I would encourage you to look up the areas that they tell you that there are mounds. Sometimes they're not listed on Google Maps. So like do a Google search on it in your area and visit them and feel the energy there. Feel the energy there. Okay, so I think that's the last of this series. Yeah, it says that it was traded. They had the obsidian from, hang on, I put my presentation back on. They had, I wrote this down. I just don't want to fuck it up. I know it's annoying. They had the obsidian from Yellowstone, the mica from North Carolina, the copper from Michigan, which actually contains sterling silver in it. That's what makes it Michigan copper, like distinctly from the area up north in the Upper Peninsula, is that it has silver in it. And they had shells from the Gulf, like all of these different tribes had all of the different potent minerals. And I feel like that's something to know. So I can't remember, but one of you wrote me a message about that you loved the Detroit Gateway Portal encoded voice note, but like couldn't place it in time. So I encourage everybody to think of the timeline in a linear fashion, even though time is not linear. Thinking of time in this way is extremely helpful because the BC, the AD, the common era, and like how the matrix kind of has time coded is like extremely confusing. And people keep throwing numbers out there of like, oh, this skull is 13,000 years old, or these bones are 2,000 years old. Like that's a pretty big discrepancy, 13,000 versus 2 years. And so when you're considering time and considering the preservation and considering the seismic shifts of the earth, pretty much the earth has shifted a little bit in its like plate tectonics and its resonance. But at the same time, it's moving in space and moving upward into the out of these, like in and out of these interstellar clouds, if you will. And so the celestial mapping and all of the astronomy mixed with astrology, it's so much easier to just think of things in the zodiacal fashion. And I feel like this is what they're trying to tell us, these Nephilim, or I don't know, whatever, these ancients that are resurfacing and coming back up for us to know and to study. is like the wisdom of the tropical Western. You know, one of my constituents said that tropical Western astrology is working to keep us in our wounds, and that like Vedic astrology is like more accurate for like our soul's trajectory, but that tropical Western astrology and sidereal in a way is like our oversoul. I tend to fuck with both of those arguments and just kind of stay neutral about that, because the more that I see, the less that I know. I think that I grasp astrology, and then like I'll listen to somebody say something who like knows a lot more about it than I do, and I'll be like, dude, I don't know shit about that. But I know enough to like cut my teeth on this, at least feel confident enough to be able to present this, you know, because it's helped me to gain clarity of like the land here, where we are in history, and what a pivotal point in history this is. So like when you think about the qualities of like astrology and the astro-celestial timeline, the Nephilim, or these giants, these Florida giants, I don't know if you want to call them just Florida giants, because giant bones were found in Wisconsin, they were found in Michigan. I actually have a graphic of like, I don't know where it's at right now. I should have put it in here, but these things just come up, you know. They found all of these gigantic bones, and essentially the Phoenicians, this sort of hidden history of the Phoenicians, became the Vikings, became the Moors, and it all like ties together linguistically. That's kind of how it is in time as well. Like that, I think that like some of them overlap, and at times there's multiple different energies from different races of people or groups of people that were happening like simultaneously. You know what I'm saying? But pre, see if I have it in here. I'll go over that in a minute. Okay, I must have not put it in here. I don't know if I did or not, y'all, and I want to make sure that you guys get this information. It's not in my uploads. Oh, here it is. So when you're thinking about this, it goes way, 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 way back. And then they redid, like they refurbished these, like they basically came through and terraformed what the Nephilim did before there was the flood, and refurbished them to try to maybe use it. I don't really know. I don't know what the reason was. Okay, here's the slide. How do I zoom in on this shit? I'm like, this has to get a lot better. Jazzy, you need to join me. You're gonna join me, and we will do this together where I don't look like such an ass by myself. But I know that this stuff that I'm presenting is like the cream, you know what I mean? Because like it's me putting together things. I think of everything as like a mind palace. And like anytime I learn any new information that's like exciting to me, it gets the dopamine going and I get that like hit. It's like I sort of store it in my mind palace. And I wrote a poem about this actually, like in 2020 during the quarantine. And that's exactly like kind of how I see this type of information too, is that like it's a big library. By the way, when I work cite this, the guy Ross Hamilton that I'm work citing here, he pronounces Libra Libra. He says Libra, like library, which I think is like really interesting because I've never heard anybody pronounce it like that. And it makes more sense for it to be pronounced like that. Okay, they're back. It's so annoying, you guys. They've never come around this often. Okay, so the serpent mound that we're talking about in this video was reconstructed around the time of Aries. So you see that Aries is about 2,000 years before the cataclysmic event. So where we're at right now is Aquarius. This is where we're at. And we came out of Pisces, the fish, and that line that's there in the precession of the equinox, or this, as I say, is a soul timeline, which looks more, oh, shit, where is it? I had it up for you guys earlier. This soul timeline, this is what I think it represents. That's like a whole nother workshop for a whole nother day. But oh my God, you guys, I need somebody to conduct this for me. Here we go. Oh, well, this wasn't the same one, but I like this one too. So the Serpent Mound was reconstructed around the time of Aries by the Adena and the Hopewell people. Shout out to the Adena and the Hopewell people. They used archaeoastronomy. Like all of the Nephilim, the Phoenicians, the Vikings, like all of these people were incredibly intelligent. It wasn't like they were just these primitive people that were like war hungry. They were in the age of Aries. So Aries is like the god of war, of like basically that war was a virtue. This is the age that they were in, like that fighting was noble, that you had to actually fight your way to God. Like you had to fight your way to save the princess in that era. Yeah. And like, that's what I really think is sort of like going on now. But I don't want to get too off track. So this like age that they were in, where they were rebuilding some of the stuff from before the cataclysm. So like the reset of the 12,000 year reset. Well, they think that it happened 12,000 years ago. So 12,000 year reset where it was like supposedly, you know, Noah's Ark, the Great Flood, where everything was like submerged. Everything was under the water. All Atlantis is all land is ice. And then everything froze over for the ice age. We're talking about during the ice age into out of the ice age and then Jesus time frame. So hopefully that makes more sense and it lands with y'all. You need to let me know. This is why I need Jasmine on my calls, because like it'll keep me logical. It'll keep me moving in a way that makes cohesive sense and not so all over the place. But it's what it is. This is how it is in my palace. It's cluttered. I'm getting it all out there because this is what helps organize it. It's almost like when I talk, I'm processing as another brain. And I said that on the encoded voice, which is why I started doing them, because, you know, one of my good friends and esteemed colleagues was like, dude, you need to record this shit. Like this shit is bomb as fuck. And that like validation, like kind of propelled me to do it, which this is a side note. I just wanted to read this. This is like about validation. It's not really about the soul timeline or the astral travel, but it's super relevant because this is what like helped me unlock the key to be able to share this with you. But this email that I got said, I'd like to spotlight one such thread that goes unnoticed but holds immense power. The skill of validation. This is Mo. This is Mo's like monthly newsletter or whatever. He said, a wise man once said, validation doesn't mean that you agree, but it shows that you understand. This phrase perfectly captures the essence of validation, a vital skill that can propel you from being a good leader to an exceptional one. And then he talks about validation at its core is the act of recognizing and affirming another person's feelings, thoughts, ideas, and experiences. It doesn't necessarily mean agreement, but it does mean understanding, acknowledging, and demonstrating empathy toward another perspective. It's an authentic affirmation that their viewpoints matter. And I loved that because it was like these women that I have around me, and also these gentlemen that I have around me now, and my young gentleman, my son, they validate for me that I'm onto something. You know what I'm saying? Like this shit makes sense and I need to share it. Okay. I don't know where I was in that sequence. This just moving by itself. And I prefer to have this like more edited and it be more logical and stuff, but it's what it is. So the serpent, this is like amazing to me. The serpent is a marker of celestial time. That serpent mound that I showed you a couple slides back from the Ohio Valley, Ross Hamilton superimposed it in his book called Star Mounds, which came out in 2012. And it's interesting also, now that I'm reading this, that the publisher is North Atlantic Books, for like Atlantis, Atlanteans. I mean, I feel like that shit connects. But he superimposed the northern and the southern hemisphere of stars onto the mounds. Actually, I'm going to show, I don't think I put it in this, but there's a 3D rendition of this. And they matched up exactly. Like, so whomever was doing this had intricate knowledge of the constellations and the movements of the stars. His book, like, he really honors, I think, like in a beautiful way, the pre-colonial monuments of the native people. I don't even know if native is like the most accurate term, because truly they're actually not native to here at all. They were maybe one of the first here, but the more and more I see, the less I know, and I really feel like they might have been interdimensional and still are interdimensional. And that all of their mysteries that they left to us are highly, highly encoded. But he writes these medicine stories of like the tribes and some of the legends that they had. And he has like such a depth of knowledge. But I smoke too much weed, y'all. I smoke too much weed to do lives. But basically that the entire Ohio Valley mounds, and I think all of them, I think every mound on Turtle Island, from Alaska to Florida to New York to Arizona, like the southeast, southwest, that it's all the setting of a huge ass Manitou system. Like that all of Turtle Island is activated. And that as above, so below. And that these are a major key into us understanding spiritual technology that corresponds with the earth, corresponds with the skies, corresponds with the celestial bodies, and those celestial bodies correspond with the caves, the underground inner earth theory, if you will. I'm going to start my own cult, inner earth gang. And when I was like first having these premonitions in my mind palace and kind of sharing it with my husband, we were outside having our morning toke together with our coffee, and I saw behind his head an albino lizard. And it was like super dark out, 5 a.m. He was prepping for work, and we were just having our sadhana together. And I saw that albino lizard. And as you know, they found bioluminescent and albino species, like albino salamanders, albino frogs, bioluminescent frogs that live within these asphalt volcanoes that are beneath the earth. Anyway, it's neither here nor there. This is the most impressive of the structure on the Serpent Mound, in my humble opinion. There's like many. In that book, he outlines the entire Serpent Mound, corresponds with the 12 zodiac in detail, superimposing it just like how you're seeing on the screen now, and like talks through the myths and the legends. And oh my God, there's 3 dragonflies right here. But this one was my favorite because people thought that they were primitive as shit based upon what they found in the graves. But look at this, it's Libra into Scorpius. This is why, Jazzy, you need to be on here, because she's a Scorpio moon, I'm a Scorpio moon, and we're both Libra sun. I don't want to out us too much. I'm never going to say like anything about my chart anymore, because y'all, the chart, the star alignment and your natal chart is like keys to your soul. Like by reading that, I could know somebody and not actually ever know them. You know what I'm saying? And of course, I love this Libra into Scorpio, and that they intersected the two together and it went perfectly together to the T. It's like the phi ratio, he says in the book. Like, what? That is like another dimension of understanding, you know, like it's so crazy. So we talked about this before, that the Adina and the Hopal are using archaeoastronomy, and that these were originally built before the cataclysmic reset by the Nephilim, aka the giants. This is from the last podcast I did about Detroit being the gateway portal to Atlantis. When we see these patterns, it's part of a larger spiritual quest. It's part of a larger unfoldment. Like all of this 222, 444, 777, 666. Shout out, Bappy Face, 666. Bad. Download that single, Bad. All of those are patterns within a larger grid, and it's all connected. And that sounds so fucking cliche, like what Emily said in the encoded voice note yesterday of like, if you're not understanding this, it's going to be a fucking catchphrase. And that's what it is, of like, it's all connected. Yeah, we're all one. No, literally every single thing is connected. If you think, therefore it is. Like instant manifestation. It's uncanny. Like the way this all works and the way it's been embodied in my level of understanding has like, it's mind boggling. And it's like, I don't really know why I know this, and I don't know why I feel called upon to be sharing it. I just do, because I feel like the greater force of all that is benevolent and ever providing, looking out for us, and that this shit about the demons and the reptilians and how they've infiltrated everything and they've hijacked even these vortexes and ley lines and use it for nefarious agenda or whatever agenda. It's like those days are gonna, they're gone. By me sharing it, like you, the listener, is encoded. You're on it for a reason. You found it for a reason. Like I went down this rabbit hole arbitrarily. I think I was like, I try to fall asleep to sound bowls or something, and then my phone sometimes does its own shit, because these are essentially scrying mirrors. Oh, there's my nephew. His head is, he's so cute. But these are scrying mirrors. Like mirror, mirror on the wall, snow, what was it? Is that Sleeping Beauty? I don't even remember, y'all. All my timelines and my vortexes are getting confused. But like, we have access to different dimensions literally in our back pocket. And that the ley lines, the subtle energy lines that dictate how the birds fly, where they fly to, how cats know how to find their way back. And I think all animals develop magnetite in their brains. But it gives this spiritual significance to this spiritual science. And at the culmination of each ley line, there's a significant mountain or lake or river, and it's all encoded in the minerals, the mines. So, I mean, it's no doubt that the Serpent Mound, like just looking at this thing, it's like, what the fuck? They terraformed it. So it was first the Nephilim that came in and knew all of that stuff. Like the fact that the giants knew that stuff, that is also very, very, very like, because we've always associated giants with like kind of like being dumb, you know? I don't know why I have that in my subconscious, that I associate it that way, but not at all. Not at all. It's like to the T. I was never good at math. So it's like I look at this and I'm like, what? How the hell? But visually it resonates. I love, I was attracted to this one because I love the obviously. I love the serpent on my Saturn finger. And I actually initially thought that it was a sperm, and the idea of the sperm, you know what I mean? Of that, like, it has to fight it. The egg chooses whether the sperm gets to enter it or not. And, but it being a serpent was even more dope. And the fact that it had like the vortex swirl and all that. But thank you to the Adena, thank you to the Hopewell people and their predecessors, the Greek, the Moor, the Nephilim, mixed gene code, cosmography. It's clear that the serpent mound is a central part of their communication system. And so zooming out, like really seeing how it is centralized to this landmass, and how the caves underneath it, the aquifers, the energy that's underneath this structure, how that also corresponds with different points along the same landmass. Like, how did they know that? They didn't have the internet. So the original people who survived the cataclysm, the great flood, the earth they submerged under melting glacial outwash, they had extraordinary physical stature, the giants, and they basically had the foundation of what we know now as instruments of spiritual science. And that's what the ley lines look like. But essentially what they did, here's a picture of the skeleton that I found on it. That's what they found in these mounds, in part of the mounds. It wasn't in all of the structures, but it was in part of the mounds. And I think like that the first set of people buried some of theirs in it. And then like the cataclysm happened, time went by, and then other people were drawn to it because of its electromagnetic resonance. But then those people might have been killed and then accidentally buried there, if that makes sense, or arbitrarily buried there. Maybe intentionally, maybe for like certain families or whatever, but like I think because they're not here anymore and the amount of bones that they found there of the natives, that it was likely, you know, a genocide site on top of bones that were placed there intentionally, if that makes sense. But what they would do, and this is according to Ross Hamilton in his book called Star Mounds, is that they would distill the twin elements of the magnetic field as they're brought into our world. So that being the positive charge of Earth, so this mound that they're actually building toward with a flat top, and then the negative charges of the sky, which are thunder and lightning. So what they were doing was invoking the powers of heaven to concentrate it and essentially harness it and flow it into the structure, into the Manitou, and essentially using this life force energy in the crystalline grid to charge, quote unquote, the site, maybe to get water, maybe to get different levels of energy. But they would then convert the twin energies of the earth and the sky into a new kind of energy, which is the literal translation of the ether, the Akash, of, you know, the things in our metaphysical world that describe space, not just space, but a primordial life force within space. In yoga, they refer to it as the Prakriti and the Prakruti, the manifest and the unmanifest. And so they're sort of taking that primordial Shakti energy force, which is why I fuck with yoga so heavy, because they have definition around some of these more nuanced intricacies that kind of go unexplained maybe in the English language. But they would harness this Manitou, this life force energy, and then charge the site with it. That's extraordinary, the fact that we have this information. Okay, first of all, that picture, I've got two pictures on here. This first picture that we're rolling with is like so grossly inaccurate, because if you look throughout history, oh my God, there's a fly in my fucking fresh squeezed orange juice and I'm pissed. There goes that. There goes, I hope he's happy in there. If you go back into history and look up the creeks, the Temecula. When they weren't being posed by the Europeans, they were not wearing feathers on their head. Like the chiefs did not even wear the headdresses, and women didn't wear the headdresses. Not even like the shamans didn't even wear the headdresses. It was only at specific times during specific rites of passage. So to see this as the emblem for what a quote unquote native is like a grossly inaccuracy of our history. And I feel like this picture doesn't do it justice, but at the same time it does, because they bake half truths into all of the stuff that they serve us. Like this is really what it was, is like these mounds that they built to get closer to the celestial bodies, invoke the powers of the sky, and somehow harness it through their wands. And I don't know if it's some Gandalf looking boy, but like basically Gandalf and that whole idea of wizardry being able to control the element alchemy. It goes way back to the medieval times. And the geometries and the measurements and the metals and the crystals that they worked with into their architectures were always of the highest quality, so that the twin expressions of nature could come together and alchemize onto the salt of the structure. From the sulfur and the mercury, which were what thunder and lightning were producing, the sky and the earth, they combine both of these for the best possible energy. So I think that they were like harvesting energy or creating some kind of toroidal field of energy, or maybe even harvesting and cleaning water, ice, like different alchemical makeups of water. But in addition to these, in addition to the ability to be able to control the weather and harness and harvest energy, the lodestones, like I learned about these in a different way. But when I went to go look them up, basically this is what the Wikipedia definition was, which is that there are naturally magnetized pieces of mineral magnetite, and they naturally occur as magnets. This one is attracting iron in the photo on this screen. And it was discovered in antiquity being Tartarian, being like these first people that were like the times of the Nephilim, the times of that stone. I just posted it on my page, my Instagram page, of the Saxer stones, what's dubbed the Saxer stones for this man named John Saxer, who actually comes from the Goth von Sax lineage, I think the name is. But he's like of a royal lineage of Switzerland when they used to have a monarchy. Whatever. He's located in Tarpon Springs now, and like has lived there for like 25 years or something, and noticed all of these like ancient stones being dredged up from the ocean that were like arbitrarily put in parks, or like people built landscape around them because like they were too heavy to move from their front lawn. So like these stones that were probably from Atlantis dating back 7,000 years, casually just on your lawn, like those are lodestones, you know what I'm saying? And like you can even see through the coloring of that. It's the color of them with the perfectly bored hole. It's like these people had advanced technology. Like they didn't have drills back then. And who the fuck carried those, or what were they doing with them? And so they think that they're anchors. Anyways, this guy calls them the Saxer stones, and just did a documentary about it like in September of 2022. And since then, like hundreds of people have been sort of like going to observe these stones, including myself. I had to see it. Like I'm 40 minutes away from that. Like I had to go see this for myself. And that energy is like, it's like stunning in a way, because, you know, you're told that the land that you're on isn't shit. And it's all these fake ways of assessing the quality and the value of the land, when like in all actuality, it all is based upon energetics. And if we can strip away the falsity, the illusion, and the Maya, the veil, and just see what really is, I feel like humanity will be able to function more harmoniously. we might be able to survive a cataclysm together, you know, if we all weren't like these guys. And so I put these guys in here. You got your boy, Henry Ford on the left, Thomas Edison, and Firestone. And they would go on these, sorry, somebody's calling me. They would go on these road trips. And of course they would use the Model T Ford and like the Firestone tires, but they would like go on these road trips. And they dubbed this one in Florida called the Celestial Railroad. They wanted to build a railroad that went through all of the major cities in Florida that were named after planets. So for example, like there's a Jupiter, Florida, there's a Neptune, Florida. I can't remember. I think there's a Pluto, Florida, and I think it was Venice, but it was supposed to be like Venus. Anyway, they wanted to create this celestial railroad that people could get on this train and essentially tour astrology, all of these cities that they dubbed, I think, vortexes. But instead, these lizard people, because this is what they are, harvesters of energy, you know, you have somebody who the engine of a car hasn't really changed too much since the Model T. Like, I'm not an engineer or anything, but seems like everybody's driving a black SUV and the engine hasn't necessarily made too many advancements. And we're still using petroleum and we're still using oil and fossil fuels. And then you have Edison. Where is Tesla? Like, why is Tesla not on these road trips? Right? Because they probably definitely didn't want homeboy very popular or in the news, let alone like out of his tower. But Edison, who is essentially commodifying, right? Like commodifying energy, and Firestone, who is utilizing natural resources for the wheels to make all of this go. And so I just point them out. I'm just kind of saying it maybe without saying it there because we don't know why they're so prominent still today. But I feel like maybe it's a psychic reminder that it's time to reconvene and that the sacred structure sites are here to help us understand that money is not the primary focus and that we need to be reproducing heaven on earth, shout out heaven on earth, Reiki, literally heaven on earth, that it's our creation and that this crystalline matrix, I think, is something that we can tap into, that we become vortexes. That's literally what starseed means, is that you're utilizing the energy of the earth, harnessing it for your benefit. Maybe it translates into eating good foods, eating citrus that's been grown in the sunlight with good water, drinking good water, thinking good thoughts, feeling good feelings, and aligning your chakras, aligning who you are, helping the people around you, operating from true intelligence of the heart space, sharing generously. Because once we live in this more feminine way, not necessarily like a divine feminine, but like in a way where it's like not always what can I get, but it's how can I be of service? How can I give? And like one of my great teachers was always just like so resonant with that theme, even if they might have been like misaligned at certain points in their trajectory, they always came back to that core resonance of what they stood for. And that is what I believe reproducing heaven on earth is that you come back to that center and you start to create co-create in a harmonious fashion instead of like this constant resistance, you know? But the crystalline or the light grid is different than the ley lines. The ley lines are associated with Earth's magnetic grids. the light grids are in a different order. They're a different dimension. They're a different geometry. They're a different design and a different structure. And they're also quantum. So the areas that you can touch down anywhere, like when you feel the energy, you can become the conduit for that energy to flow through. And that's what Tantra really is. It's not necessarily overindulgence in desire, but it's the dissolution of all desire through desire, if that makes sense, through like really feeling through your senses, and then it just dissolves and you become a neutralized presence. You become neutral. And that the magnetic grid and the ley lines are more place-based and determined, like those are determined more about where the minerals are. Whereas the crystalline grid, you can utilize, of course, if you're on a ley line vortex and you touch down in the crystalline grid, this is where I believe like the power is held. But your body has to be clear and aligned for you to be able to even get to those coordinates without like any sort of resistance. Or like when I tried to do this in the vortexes in Arizona, I got like really sick. Like I was approaching, I think it was called the Bell vortex, the one with the cathedral at the top. And on my way to it, I became extremely dizzy. Like I could not take the energy for whatever reason. Like my sixth chakra just got like swirled around. So I don't know. I don't even know. I smoked too much weed. I smoked too much weed to be doing this. Hang on for me just 1 second. I'm gonna check on my kids really quick and I'll be right back. Sorry guys, this is like why I don't do live stuff unless it's like my teacher trainings, because the lawn guys decided to come today and stick around. And then like I have both of the kids here, so it's just a lot. They're good. I'm trying to just chill and drink my fresh squeezed Florida orange juice, but there's a bug in it now. And smoke my weed and tell you all this truth that I woke up with. So yeah, shout out to Spirit Spores, who I shout out a lot, because this protocol of microdosing pretty much every other day, or going on like 4 days and then pausing for 2 days and then going another 4, in like really incremental amounts, where I still feel like I can keep control of everything, but I'm making, like, I think very laterally. I don't think like how everybody else does. I don't know, I know a lot of really brilliant people, but I don't think like them. I don't think like anyone else. I think like very laterally. And therefore I get sidetracked a lot. But I can also make different connections. And so what the microdosing has done is be able to not only connect the dots, but then understand what the meaning is of the definitions that I have in the subconscious. So not only the Atlanteans, the people of Lemur, all of our ancestors, every single one of our ancestors. Oh my God, now there's a flock of geese, like seagull. Actually, these are grackle. There's different like factions of birds that come around the bayou daily. And it's like they all come at once and it's crazy. That's another podcast for another day, to talk about the patterns of the birds and how do they know? And that psyop that all of the birds are fake. Okay, so the Atlanteans would control earthquakes by pulling the electrical force out of the earth before it turned into heat energy. which is what causes the earthquakes today, that causes the seismic and the tectonic shifts, is the heat energy. They were able to keep the earthquakes at bay and hold back volcanic eruptions through many centuries of pulling the earth out as the earth moves through its own magnetic field, and then pulling the energy out of the sky, which was also the magnetic field. They converted it to a negative charge. So the energy of the earth, see how like in this card, the High Priest of Atlantis, he has like the earth and he's using crystals and he has like the aligned chakras and he's like working with this indigo like sky, this Atlantean sky with the structures and the ruins and the lodestones, the megaliths behind him. This card is on the money because that is essentially what these folks were doing. And like he's got markings on his body. His face looks Asiatic. Like there's many different factions. I highly recommend watching Old World Florida on the Greek versus Creek, or that the Greek is the Creek, because like his linguistic connections based, I think, in Finnish, like the runes are like so dead on accurate. And there's like a lot of that connection I've never made before. So I feel like he's really unique in that way, in the way that he thinks. And all of us have unique ways of seeing these things. Like you might be seeing something completely different than me. I have to put this in the form of the slides so that I don't get lost in what I'm saying, because the word Atlantis is like, it bears such an energetic charge. Like there's so much just that word in and of itself and what it means and what it could potentially mean on an ethereal plane, on a physical plane, on an actual historical plane, and then like what it means in mythology and what it means for just the Akashic records and all that is. It's so charged. And so kind of hearing all of these words at once, it's like kind of overwhelming in some ways. But at the same time, this is my first time cutting my teeth on stuff like this. I normally study yoga, but it's very similar. Like I found a lot of parallels in like knowing the Bhagavad Gita and sort of the more noble concepts of self-development and this moral arc or whatever. And then also in tandem, learning about the Tartarian stuff, everything old world, and everything that corresponds to the Moorish, like Islamic architecture that you see consistent in almost every major city. It's like kind of weird that like you think of cities and you think of like corporations of like there's a Starbucks in literally like every city, and the globalization and the corporatization of everything. But when you go and visit those cities, there's always like a specific vibe or resonance. Like nothing can ever be like Detroit. The resonance of when you're in that city with the tall Gothic, Venetian Gothic, sometimes Aztecian, like there's all kinds of architecture, Tartarian architecture in what I think was the city of Nephilim. I don't think like the city itself, what Woodward designed to basically be mirrored after Pierre L'Enfant, who designed DC. I don't think I think that's who built the present day Detroit. But prior to all of the Tartarian architecture, Tartarian-like architecture, the true Tartarians were actually living there and had built the mound structures, like specifically Fort Wayne, where I kind of talk about it in the last one about Detroit, where it's like, it's a mound that had a portal gateway to the Underground Railroad, as well as the Nephilim bones that are in the River Rouge. So super curious about that. Like that stuff, it goes so deep. This is why I need another person here to kind of direct like my thoughts. But I have them on this screen. It's just better when there's somebody else to like bounce ideas off of. and get like that validation from, like that affirmation of like, okay, yeah, we're onto something here. And I know Jasmine has it. If any of you out there have it, I'm open. You know what I'm saying? But you have to know who you are in it, because I don't go into this trying to prove that any like one race is superior, for example, or like that these are even really the bones of the Nephilim. Like, I'm in it with neutral information of what could have potentially occurred, and putting it into context through combining astrology with actual based archaeology. And so they would combine these two forces into an energy that literally transmuted their original structures into ethereal structures. And when Atlantis sunk, many of the structures were raised up to a completely etheric plane. And on our plane, it just left foundational traces, which explains a lot about like the hundreds of women that I've had come through Circle at Starseed. And have like, we've all gone on shamanic journeys. Some of us have actually seen the structures of Lemuria and have seen the structures of Atlantis, and could describe these in detail. The Rudolf Steiner book that I link in the Detroit encoded voice note is a great book for that. If you don't know what I'm talking about, I'm sorry. I have so many messages coming through right now. It's distracting. I'm going to try not to look at this. It's very, very, very distracting. But basically these structures transform the landscape into fertile grounds. And this is spelled wrong. It's not spelled L-O-A-D, it's spelled L-O-D-E, load, which I think is like super important, because Ode can be traced back to Odin, which is I think Nordic. I don't know too much about the husky featured gods and goddesses. I'm going to have Phoenix on here. She knows a lot about that shit. But that Nordic line of Ode, like it traces back to that time, which is why I think they specifically spell it L-O-D-E, stones. And they were used to hold the activation and the energy of these specific sites. I got to feel that energy in that video that I have on my latest Instagram. That's what I'm in front of. Like, that's the energy that I was channeling. And it was like, holy shit. And when we got there, my husband and I got there, he took me on a date there. I was like, yes, we saw the snake. There was a man. And by the way, that reference is because like, supposedly that crystal river to Tarpon Springs is the gateway, or the actual Garden of Eden itself. And this is what John Saxer claims. But when we got there, there's a bunch of those stones sort of like lined up in these really strange areas. Like they dredged them up from the canal and kind of like they were too heavy to do anything else with. So they sort of like lined them up. And this man like it looked like he had a fishing pole and like he had a cooler and his little like chair. And he just like was spread eagle in the middle of these stones, which were on the side of a road. It was just a really awkward place to do it, because it's not like it was a beach. It's not like it was really even anything that was carved out for anybody to just sort of dwell, but he chose to be in the middle of those lodestones. And then I wanted to ask him, like, why did you choose here? But when I went up to go like take a picture of the stones, he was like, oh, I just decided to go here because you can get a direct hit of the sun. And I was like, and he was a very fair skinned man, like turning red. And I was like, interesting. So I noted it and was like, have it in my mind palace. And when all of these things happen synchronistically and I start connecting all of the dots laterally, it's like, I wake up and I spit out these slides, because it's like all of that connects. And it's almost when I'm asleep, so much more is happening. Maybe I'm forming the underlying details of each of the stories. But then when I wake up, it's like, okay, it's integrated. I can communicate it. Whereas before, I don't know that I was smoking so much pot that it was actually, I think that there's a chemical that's produced when you smoke the pot that suppresses your dream state for some of us. And we don't actually dream when we're smoking too much pot. And that was me for a little while. they say that like it's either that like you have blocked the receptors of your dreams, or that like you're a complete narcissist and like don't feel any like guilt or shame or anything that you have to work out in your consciousness or your conscientiousness, and so you just don't dream. And so I wasn't having it, and I was like, oh my God, am I a narcissist? Is it me? And then I pretty much started, shout out Spirit Spores once again, started doing the micro dosing and sometimes macro dosing, and began to be able to integrate these large sets of data, like huge sets of data. Because I wake up, I think like I've said this multiple times in all of my trainings, but I wake up at 3 a.m. every single day for sadhana since 2016. Since my teacher, David, you know, in 2016, became an initiate of his school of thought. And he said that during that time, which is referred to as the Amrit Vela in the Vedas, it's a very low psychic disturbance time. And it's also referred to as the witching hour because like there's not a ton of people awake. And so the Akashic is very quiet at that time. There's not a ton going on. And so you can access, it's just quiet for you to be able to access that direct connection to spirit or God or Manitou. And I feel like maybe that's why. And I did that this morning. I do it every morning, but I, especially this morning, had I had a gumption to actually be able to share this. So some of the questions that I asked, this is a picture of Mayan ruins, which there are Mayan genetics, Mayan glyphs on that site that I showed you from my Instagram page where we visited Crystal River. Those mounds, for lack of a better term, or earthworks, had pottery that contained the Mayan Venus glyphs. So some beings from Maya, from the Mayan Empire, came over and built similar structures, or at least their bones were found in these similar structures. And maybe they made them for astral traveling, intergalactic trading. Were they interacting astrally? You know, these are all things that have been on Ancient Aliens and that David posed in a lot of his metaphysics talks, but only now being drawn through psychogeography do I have syntax to be able to even explain it to people. The ley lines are memory lines, especially when they have perfect mathematic equations around them. And that the vortex, which I just talked about this, the vortexes underneath, I wanted to make sure that I didn't leave that out. So what does all of that correlate to? The serpent mound being completely astrologically aligned to the 12 zodiac. And then I think aligned to the caves and the aquifers and these energy vortexes that are in inner earth. How do they correspond then to the crop circles? This is a picture from Spirit Stem. She's amazing. I don't know if she identifies as she or whatever, but we've been interacting a lot. She posted this because this is a brand new crop circle that's in, I should have put the town on here, but let me get the exact location. Spirit Stem, where are you? Here she is. It's in Wiltshire, UK, and it happened on June 4th. So she says that she believes that it's the 3 speeds of light, and she's using AI to kind of interpret what the symbols might mean. But I think that when you combine the crystalline light grid with the earth grid, the crop circles could be pointing to sacred sites that have very active energy. She says that it could be the 3 speeds of light. She also says that it's been theorized that there's a DNA coding sequence that takes place via crop circles, and that electromagnetism in crop circles is capable of altering the DNA, which is like, when I just look at it, it's like, holy shit, is my DNA being altered just by looking at this? Because I feel a way. When I saw that, I was like, holy shit. And I texted her and I was like, this reminds me of the Keys in Florida, of that they are natural, they're on natural ley lines toward vortexes that carry energetic charge that the ancients would use for energy harvesting, essentially. And she was like, yeah, dude, totally. There's the Crystal Castle, or what did she say? The Coral Castle. She stated a couple of mounds. And I mean, yeah, those are all highly, highly charged sites. And so this is my theory, is like, as above, so below, that there's caverns and there's aquifers and there's underground rivers. And it's way more intricate than this can show us. But based upon this map, which I think is from like 2014, I think all of them intersect, and that you can actually travel with large ass ships in these large rooms, or even with a submarine or something like that, something that can submerge in the water. I believe that you can travel through all of those, and that these elites know, and that they've been doing it for years. I don't know, like, again, I'm not saying that I have any answers after all that. After the lawn guy is in my lawn this whole fucking time that I'm trying to do this shit. But is there a connection between the ley lines, the crystalline grid, the native mound earthwork structures, and harvesting free energy? Are the crop circles referencing one another? Are the crop circles connected to the free energy? And then do they have encoding from higher consciousness, where we're not just looking at them, but we're actually seeing them and seeing what their interdimensional value could be? Could that mean something for us energetically? Were they conducting intergalactic trade? Are the structure ruins along parallel ley lines situated similarly to how cities and cathedral and these stone sites are? And is it our karmic law and duty to rediscover the details? And then what are we going to actually do? Like, what is the tangible, like, the fuck am I going to do with all this information that I woke up and just spat out? And I really think that it's like so abundant, like the information is so abundant. It's not even a matter of if. It's like when these sacred sites starts to show themselves, and when like the rest of mass consciousness catches up to those of us that already know that this shit is already connected. We already been on that level of like, we are all one. We don't subscribe to the programs of social media or any of the mass media. Like, we've completely stripped ourselves of any kind of mind control. And if you feel like you are stuck in that, it's not a judgment. Like, you're attracted to my content for a reason, and these words that I'm saying, like, for a specific reason. And so the Om symbol is not just for the awakened people. It means that you're in this lulled state, and that we constantly circle back to this like sleep state. We unveil ourselves through knowledge and seeing things and recalling things, and we get to that truth, and we feel that resonance of truth, and then integrate it through meditation, through our ritual, through our sadhana, through our prayers. And we move forth from a place of supreme intelligence, like, I think heart-centered space. It's so easy for me to say on these, but like, to go and sit in traffic around here, it's like holy shit, like, mass consciousness is not there yet. We can't even do the basic stuff of like loving our neighbor as we love ourselves. And so I think this whole thing is very spiritual, and that if we leave out the esoteric, and if we leave out, I don't know if esoteric's the right word, ethereal, if we leave out the Manitou, the spiritual component, that which is giving of life, energy, the Holy Spirit, Shakti energy, there's so many like parallels for that word and synonyms for that word. Like, the more that we tune into that and connect to that, the higher the frequency, the more heart-centered we start to live. So that's what I got for you. I'm gonna have Jasmine join me. I feel like, you know, it wasn't Jasmine, it was who sent this to me? One of you all sent this to me this morning, and I loved it. It said, insecurity. Please understand your worth, your value, your purpose here on earth. There is no need to feel small or compare yourself to others. You are so much more powerful than you think. Shout out to the click. You guys send me the most inspirational shit every day, daily, and I can only do this because you're there. And so I'm going to have Jazzy join me because I am feeling a little insecure, but I know that this is like information that's like of the highest order, and that those that have entertained, those who have asked shall receive. So anyway, drop me a line, starseedwisdomyoga.com, starseedwisdomyoga@gmail.com. You can also hit me on Instagram. You can message on YouTube. Satnam, yogis.